I mean, generally that the East Coast is beautiful, but I didn't have any real idea. I also just never saw myself. I mean, weirdly because I'm from Halifax, but I never saw myself out here. So, to be honest, I've never just really given the East Coast much thought.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have. I didn't know what to expect when I came out here, and I will say, um, like, it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful that I totally understand and appreciate why those commercials are what they are.
Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how you got into acting.
So I grew up in BC. I grew up in Vancouver. I was born in Halifax. Um, and I moved to Vancouver probably when I was about 8 years old. And I got into acting when I did a play in grade 11. So long ago. I did a Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was the first thing that I'd ever done. And I think I just started drama classes and didn't really know whether, I was neither here nor there about any of it. Um, and I had the tiniest part. I played Starveling, and I had um, this paper. Did we make him out of a Kleenex box or something? I had a dog. I can't remember, to be honest, if in the play Starveling has a dog, but for whatever, I had a dog and it was made out of this like Kleenex box or something. And um, surprisingly, shockingly to me, myself as Starveling and the dog were very funny. And I've always been, and I still have it, but I was very shy when I was younger. Um, and the fact that people would find me funny, especially when I wasn't intending to be, blew my mind. And so that was my kind of first foray into it. And yeah, I really dug it.
So like when you're saying like people found you funny, like was it something that you were kind of like, okay, I can kind of use this or I like this, or was it kind of more or less like, dude, I'm playing a part that I'm not supposed to be funny. Stop laughing at me.
I think no, it wasn't that. It was more that, like, again, being a very shy kid, um, because shyness is an interesting thing because it's not that you don't necessarily want attention. You're just a bit uncomfortable with it, right? And there was something about being on a stage and having some kind of remove, um, uh, where I got the attention, and I could enjoy it, and it felt good, as opposed to, I will say sometimes even now when I'm on camera, um, uh, that, I guess, shyness, or that um, I get a bit awkward because that attention is there on, when you have a camera in your face, that attention is there in a way that can feel a bit, it's you're on the spot in a way that
Yeah.
in theater I don't necessarily feel that. So so that was also an adjustment for me because I kind of did theater for a little bit and then got into film kind of randomly, and that was the biggest thing that I kind of had to kind of get used to, was just, yeah, that kind of attention on me.
I can relate to that because now when you were saying, of course, that you were in this play, Midnight Summer's Dream,
Yeah.
back I remember, I think I was in I want to say maybe grade 4, grade 5, could have been a little bit later. And I only had a small part in a Christmas play. Like, it's funny because if there's only so many of you in a play, it's like, all right, we'll give him multiple parts, right?
Yes,
So it
yes,
was like I played a mouse in a Christmas
yes,
play where all I had to do was come out and say, oops, I mean, eek. And that was
yes.
a crowd loved it, killed. I was like,
Yeah,
that's
great.
great. First laugh. Then I had to come out and say a big kind of monologue about like, uh, toss the potatoes, mash, whatever. And that I was late for, way late
Okay,
for. They had to stop the
okay.
play. And it was to the point where like the person that did this play was like so invested. They had to mic you up. You're only a child. I came out and like was saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. And she was like, just get up there, do your lines. I didn't know they had stopped the play, so I was
Well,
like, all right.
where was the person who was supposed to get you on stage? Because obviously
You
it wasn't.
trust kids. This is the problem. You trust kids to go help kids. So it's
Oh,
a
that's
Christmas
hilarious.
play. We're like young. It's like when you're not involved in the play, they're like, rather than make this like 8, 10-year-old, whatever age, sit and watch this whole dry play, like let them go back to their homeroom and watch a Christmas movie with their buddies. And that's what
Sure.
happened. And then
Oh
no
my
one
God, that's
came out
hilarious.
to fix, like, hey, Brian, there's like one scene left before you come out. So yeah, you might want to watch how the Grinch Stole Christmas, but we might need you. So
That's
could you
hilarious.
make your way out? But no one bothered. So I get it. And then you get a few laughs from that, but I do like your approach there of or what you said in terms of the shyness, because we've actually interviewed Colin Mockery earlier in these seasons, and Colin said that he was a shy kid, but his friend dared him to do stand-up or comedy, and then when he got that first laugh, he was like, man, it's
Is it?
contagious, it's like a drug. And he's like, I liked it. And I was like,
Yes.
totally relate to you. But I
Yeah.
was a shy kid when I was younger, and I was like, do I really want to say anything here? Do I really want to input something? If I say something and it doesn't work, like funny wise, it's like you're dead in the water. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, that's the kid who said a joke one time, didn't work, and that's how we remember him. When you get
Yeah.
older, you get a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. And see, and it's funny because, with that play, my part was funny. And if I had continued down the comedy route, I think I would not have. The pressure to be funny
Yeah.
to me is just I can't. So I mean, I think I've done improv and I've tried to do, I remember having an assignment in a class once where we had to do it was like a 4-minute stand up. And I just couldn't like that kind of stuff, because I do think I think I can be funny in my life, but
Yeah.
the second I know that I'm supposed to be funny, it's all done. So
No,
yeah.
I can relate to that 100%, because it's like when someone does, and I think comedians hate it when they're like, "Oh yeah, you're a comedian, tell me a joke." It's like it doesn't work
Well,
like that.
no,
It's
no,
like
no, no, that's
it's like
awful.
you need where it's like, tell me a story that you think is funny. Then I feel like a comedian would be like, "Oh, I can do this," because they'll give you an antidote, or like, "Hey,
Yeah.
this one time me and my kid were here and then this," and I'm like, that's better than just like, "Go ahead, tell me a joke." Actually, one of the recent episodes that you put out, I think last, I believe it was like Thursday that we watched it here anyway.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I actually had auditioned for one of the roles in that episode, and
Which
then
which which
it
role was
was
it?
I think it was the part where it's I'm just trying to remember the whole thing, because I was in Ottawa last week, just
Okay.
for a break. But I believe the episode was it's like a pop singer or whatever, movie producer,
Yes.
whatever it was,
Yes.
and it was the boyfriend part where it was like, I can't remember
Okay.
the whole line, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm here to support her, I'm here to do this, and I was just
Yes.
like, I read for those lines, and I was like, okay, it's just to keep anything out there. And we've had Justin on, and I've made a joke to Justin that I'm like, listen, if there's a part for a podcasting role, because I know they did one earlier where it was like on the
Yes.
rocks and she was involved with
Yes.
Mary
I
Walsh.
totally know
I
what
was
you're
like,
talking about.
I want to be a part of that, because I was like, I want to be your nemesis. And then when I seen the other episode the week before where he teams up kind of with the buddy cop, and that cop was an
Yes.
asshole, I was like, Justin. I was like, that
Oh,
could have
that's
been me.
hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay. I had no idea. I don't know. I think I thought you were just Ontario or something. Oh, that's so
No,
funny. Okay, awesome.
that is fair, because a lot of the stuff that we do is try to base off Ontario, or
Got it. Yes.
my
Okay.
background is mostly Ontario.
Okay.
But so I want to know, going into the next question here, is like, how did you end up getting this role on Hudson and Rex? Because I feel like, for however long this runs, this is what you're going to be more or less remembered for. Now, again, you have been in Rookie Blue and other projects, but I feel like especially here in Newfoundland, people are going to be like, hey, if they see you on the street or see you out in public, they're going to be like, hey, I know where you're from. I've seen you on TV in Hudson and Rex.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about how you got this role.
I mean, I wish I had a really exciting story around this, but
Make
I
one up. No,
don't.
no.
Um, I just auditioned for it. Like, we get auditions. I mean, you just get an audition, and this one came up, and um, I did it. I mean, what is interesting about the story is that I did the audition, and I think it was, I mean, God, I don't even remember what year it was now, but it was earlier in the year. It was like January or February, and I did it, and I actually thought it went well. Um, but you never know with these things. Even if they do go well, who knows? And then and then I just didn't hear anything. I just didn't hear anything, and usually you wait a few weeks and you don't hear anything, and you figure, it's gone somewhere else. But I'd heard that the project had been shelved,
Okay.
which means that always that is an interesting one because it means that it hasn't gone away. I mean, it means that somebody else wasn't cast. It means that it got put away for a bit, and who knows, it could come back. And it did. I got a call in the summertime, so I didn't hear about it for months and months and months and months. And then I got a call in the summertime, and they were interested in me, and I had to do a bunch of screen tests with some of the other actors, and I never really knew whether I had the part. Like, I think I did, and again, like, nobody would confirm that I had the part, and then finally, it was, like, a week before shooting, and then they were like, "Yes, we've got you, and we've got everybody else cast," and I guess that often happens when they're not when they're trying to partner up different players. Nobody wants to definitively tell you anything until they know
Yeah.
who's gonna match best with who, but then that was it, and I think the biggest thing for me was the news that we were gonna go to Newfoundland, because when I auditioned for the show, I didn't know that, right? Like, I had no idea that it was going to be
Oh
shooting
wow. Okay.
outside of Ontario. I just assumed that um, so it was interesting, because I found that out, um, when we were finalizing the details of my getting the part, and then that was a whole other thing because we thought we were going to be shooting the show for 3 months. And then it turned into we arrived here, and then it turned into a couple more episodes. So it would have been like 4 months. And then it turned into, I mean, I think we shoot 6 months now. And
Oh
sometimes,
wow.
depending on the weather, seven. So but yeah, I just auditioned for it like I would anything else.
So like, do you obviously now where you're in Newfoundland for that amount of time, like, do you necessarily live here? Do you kind of rent a place here? Because I know with Justin's, well, I can't confirm it, but I know when we did the interview with Justin per se, Justin was in Ontario because they just wrapped up. I think we were you just wrapped up season 3,
Yeah.
but like I feel like in his situation, like he'll find somewhere to stay for that amount of time, fly back and forth if he has to.
Yeah.
But like in your situation, is that the same, or is it more or less like, hey, because I know you said that you were born raised East Coast, moved to
Yeah.
Vancouver, but like, were you kind of excited to come to Newfoundland and then be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to set up shop here, or is it more or less like, as long as we do the show, I'm here, but then I'm going somewhere else for when we're done?
Well, so this is the tricky thing. So when when I first got this job, and I think I've said this in a few interviews, I really had a hard time here.
Oh,
Also,
really?
our show has a quick turnaround, right? So essentially, we live out here. Essentially, we go back home for about 3 or 4 months out of the year. So we spend the majority of the year here. I have two children. And so my partner and my whole family is out here with me. And that was kind of the only option for us. I think Justin and Kevin go back and forth. Kevin has a family, and it's impossible for them to all move here. Whereas my kids are very young, so it was easier for us to just all come out. Um, but initially, the first season I found really hard. The other thing too is I don't have a license, and so the first snowfall here, because at the
Oh,
time, Mike, my partner, he was going back and forth, and I remember, it was like October. It was like October, and, it snowed, and I think the snow was like, I don't know, it covered like a third of the window, which was high in October. And I live right at the time I was living right downtown. I don't have a license. Everything is a hill here in St. John's. And so it was the first time I'd stepped outside and I realized that if Mike wasn't here, I was actually trapped inside the house because you can't stroll. You can't stroll
no,
around the
that's true.
city.
Yeah.
And carrying a baby, because he was about 2 at the time, carrying him was it just felt so dangerous. It's so slippery, and so I had a hard time in the beginning, and then weirdly enough, Snowmageddon was the thing that kind of made me come around, and now, so it's been about 3 years. Now this is absolutely our home. Um, and I feel like, we've got 2 homes. We've got our home in Toronto, and there's our home here. We haven't been back because of the pandemic, we chose to stay here between seasons. So we haven't been back to our Toronto home in a long time. It'll be a year and a half, I think, before since we'll have gone back. And it's a really bizarre thing because I've gotten so used to the pace here, and I'm nervous about going back to Toronto. I'm so excited to see my friends and family because that's a bit hard. But in terms of the city,
Yeah.
it's such an angry city and it's so abrasive, and particularly post pandemic, I am a bit, both myself and Mike are actually kind of dreading having to go back because it's been so long. We feel like we don't even know what that city is anymore. So, so this has kind of become our home.
I like though that you're because some people give you like almost like a political answer or what answer you like to hear, but I do like that you kind of gave the honest answer, like that it was tough, because I can assume like, when you come from another place, you're coming to Newfoundland, or if you're coming from Newfoundland going somewhere else,
Mhm.
it's tough to adjust. Now I don't have like a young family, but I mean, I like that you kind of got into that about you know making the move and choosing why to stay here because of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Because I know coming from Newfoundland to go to school in Ottawa. Now I know it's not Toronto per se, and people in Toronto
Still
will tell me that.
different.
Will tell me that, hey, Ottawa is not Toronto. I'm like, I got you. Don't
I know,
worry.
but Ottawa is not Newfoundland. Do you know what
No,
I mean? Like
exactly.
Newfoundland is really like it's. I've never the culture out here is so specific, and I've never lived in a place like this. And again, initially when I first got here, I was like, I can't do this. Like I miss my city and I miss my home and I miss my people, because it is also, because you're on the island, I don't know, there is something a bit isolating. It feels isolated out here. But all of the things that I had a hard time with in the beginning, I've kind of come around to, and all the things have somehow turned into the positives of this place, whereas
Yeah.
before. So anyway, but Ottawa, back to what you're saying, Ottawa
No,
is not St. John's
yeah, yeah. It's
or Newfoundland,
in
right?
fairness, it's kind of like relating it to your story in a way. It's like, and this is kind of what I do on this podcast. I take someone's story and then be like, hey, it's like let's give them an example so that they know that they're not alone here. But it's like,
Yeah.
I went from going to Munn in Newfoundland, where you would see your high school friends, if
Yes.
you had them, people from other schools that you kind of know. But I still feel like a little bit of outcast because I was never blending in school. Like I know
Out
you.
here?
Yeah, yeah. Like I know
Okay.
who these people are, but I was just never in what you call a clique or a
Yeah.
cool crowd.
Yeah.
So you kind of felt like an outsider in your own little place.
Yeah.
And I remember just coming, it was like communications at Memorial I took. And then I was like, man, we have our own ghouls table, which is a place in Newfoundland. They're like, I'm like, man, I know you. We grew up here, but I don't feel like I'm accepted at this table. I don't feel like, and it could just be me. It could be
Yeah.
they could have accepted you. It's just that you didn't feel it.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Ottawa, and it was just like it kind of felt a little bit like, okay, I'm not someone's brother anymore. You don't know me because I'm, so and so's brother or so and so's
And that can
son.
be so liberating. Like what you're
Yeah,
talking about can be so liberating for sure. Yes.
and also the other thing that I had to adjust, which is the opposite, is you could go into like Memorial anywhere in Newfoundland, ask someone, "What are you at?" They'll be like, What's your father at? How's your mother?" And you'd be like, "Oh my god, so you know me in some capacity? That's great." But up away, first thing I would say to people is like, "What are you at?" They'd be like, oh, "Excuse me." I'm like, "What are you at?" And they're just like, I'm here. And I'm like, it means what's
Yes.
going on. And then the amount of times I had to explain that, I was like, it's probably just easier to say, hey, what's up? And
Yes.
then people were like, "You're from Newfoundland? Where's the accent?" I'm like, "I can't win. I can't win here." It's either, "Hey, you're a Newfoundlander. Where's that accent? Where's that saying?" And I'm like, if I do that, you'll be confused. So I'm trying to adjust it for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I totally get that.
it's a tough adjustment, but as soon as you start making friends, getting a little bit of life yourself. Again, I don't drive in Ottawa. I take the buses, which I like, but it's just as soon as you start getting that adjustment, I find coming back here actually because of the pandemic and I had to work here. It was like a almost like the opposite of trying to adjust to this lifestyle again. And then when you get adjusted to this lifestyle and then go back up away, because that's what I did. I went up for a
Yes.
bit of vacation, and pandemic kind of, I'm not going to say destroyed Ottawa, but like everything that you imagined in your 20s, you're like, man, like the pub's no longer open this late,
It's all
this
different.
place,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, it's not the same. And it's just
Yeah.
kind of to you, you're like, we'll get there eventually, but it's like I almost wish that you didn't go up there because it's like if I don't see it, I don't believe it.
Yeah. 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 So
Yeah.
wait, so did you come, so you were living in Ottawa and then came back
Yeah.
during the pandemic
Yeah,
and
like
you've
just
been here
actually
okay.
just prior to the pandemic because
Yeah.
I was looking for media work. I mean, I've had radio degree, sports journalism degree or diploma, and then couldn't find work. So then I was like, I came home for Christmas as I usually do,
Yeah.
and then found work down here, just a little bit still in media relations, I
Yeah.
guess. And then pandemic hit where people were losing work, and I was like, man, I feel you. I feel bad for you, but I
Yeah.
mean all the time that I couldn't find work, I'm like the worst possible time that you're like, I'm definitely not finding work in a pandemic. It's like, oh, found something just prior to pandemic. So I was like,
Yeah.
good, but still feel bad for others who did, like
Well,
lost.
it is crazy. The number of people that I know from Ontario, from Toronto, who have come back here. Like I've got a whole community of people now, and a chunk of them are Toronto people who
Yeah.
just came back, and whether they came back pre-pandemic and then opted to stay because it made sense, or just were like, I have to get out of Toronto. I'm going to go back home. But like they're just like a whole slew of people who've come back, and it's interesting, because I think the pandemic obviously has made people question, priorities and what's necessary in terms of living. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are just like, no, I'm just going to stay out here because life is just simpler and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Have you like, I guess in a kind of a fun aspect here or curious, and I doubt you've ever been asked this question, but like, have you ever seen like the Newfoundland tourism commercials like prior to coming here and then thinking to yourself, hey, that'd be a fun area to go to? Or were you kind of like, man, like, because as someone young, or relatively young when I'm looking at these commercials, and I was born and raised here, I get it. I get it what they're going for. Like, here's the landscape, here's the
Yes.
sea, here's the culture. And I'm like, I lived it. I'm like, God. And then you look at like a Toronto or Ontario commercial where it's like, come see the Hockey Hall of Fame,
There's
come
nothing
do this, come do
there's
this.
nothing.
I'm like, holy, that's a lot of things for entertainment. What's our entertainment? Like two old
Oh,
people talking, but you come down here for your more or less like, all right, I like to settle down. I like the land, sea, CBC, obviously land and sea as well. But like, when you've seen these, if you have seen these commercials, where you kind of like, oh, this is enticing.
well, funnily enough, I don't really watch. I mean, I don't really. I was going to say very much TV. I don't watch anything,
Yeah, yeah,
particularly since having kids. So I'd not seen the commercials. But what's funny, so also coming out here, I mean, generally that the East Coast is beautiful, but I didn't have any real idea. I also just never saw myself. I mean, weirdly because I'm from Halifax, but I never saw myself out here. So to be honest, I've never just really given the East Coast much thought.
yeah.
So I didn't really have. I didn't know what to expect when I came out here, and I will say, um, like, it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful that I totally understand and appreciate why those commercials are what they are, because now when I see them, because we in Toronto, we don't actually have a television, but out here we
Yeah.
do. So now when I see those commercials, I'm like, "Yes, of course," and I see those commercials and I'm completely sold because I've
Yeah.
also seen those images in real life, in person, and understand the majesty of what those landscapes are, you know? Um, so that's
It's
why
like taking an outside point of view from it because it's like I look at the jelly bean houses all the time and I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like
it's
we're not
nothing
the
to
same
you.
color. Yeah, but like when you go away and then come back and you see like how other people paint their houses or like whatever, it's like the minors to details. You're like, wow, you know what? That it actually is pretty cool.
It's novel, right? Like we're not, if you're not used to seeing that, you're not used to seeing it. And again, the landscape out here is just I'm not, because I'm originally from BC. I grew up in Vancouver, and it's
Yeah.
gorgeous out there, right? That's the other thing too. Like I'm used to the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. Like I didn't even realize, because again, I've never really given this much thought, but like if I talk about it in terms of personalities, like the Pacific Ocean just seems so tame and mild and easy. And then you have the Atlantic Ocean here, which is just a beast. Like it's terrifying. You look at it
I,
over,
I feel
you're
like it
looking.
I feel like it takes on the it's almost like another Newfoundlander in itself, where it's like, yeah, you know what?
Oh,
It
for
doesn't
sure.
mean harm, but it can be kind of like
It's
upfront in your
dangerous.
face.
It's dangerous. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. And what's also incredible is, like we joke, we've just had a whole slew of family here. We had family from August till October, which was amazing, but also a bit insane. But we had a bunch of family going to Signal Hill. And I don't know if you recall this, but there is a point on Signal Hill where the path is really quite narrow, and there's a chain link on the rock wall, and so you kind
Okay.
of can hold on to the chain link, but it's like a drop. Like if you look over to the side, it's a sheer drop. And in Ontario, you would just never have that without crazy signage everywhere. But B, it's like you're like the Atlantic Ocean is terrifying, and it's also not hard to acquaint yourself with it when you've got like these crazy ledges or like cliffs that are just, you're like walking this tiny little narrow gap and you could easily slip. Or I think of like the kids, because
Yeah.
for me everything's the kids, and I'm like, my kids can't walk up here because I just wouldn't trust any
Yeah.
of them to not like run over an edge. Anyway, yeah.
No, that's fair, because I know when like going with the commercials of when I seen it when I was younger from the Newfoundland side of things, I always thought they were like kind of either dull or boring, but I got what they were
Oh
going
no.
for.
Yeah.
And then when I seen the Ontario ones, like it's funny because when you're smaller, you don't know what you want to grow up to be. But when I got into like the PR and media side of things, I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Like they get like either an Ontario singer that we don't know of to do these commercials, or in one case it was Keisha Shante, because I guess it was
Okay.
really, and I was like, oh, that's dope. And then you see like all these different landscapes and things, and I was like, oh man, that's cool. I want to go to Ontario and see these. And then when I get to Ontario, I'm like, wait, the Hockey Hall of Fame and Parliament Hill are nowhere close to each other. This
Yeah.
is like planning out your day.
Oh
Or like
yeah.
where in Newfoundland it's like, hey,
Everything's
it's
like
like,
5-minute walk.
yeah, the only thing I hate about, well, I get it, it's like a love-hate relationship with like Newfoundland tourism commercials, but it's like they advertise Lansom Meadows, and then in the corner they tell you how many people live in like Lansom Meadows or one of these towns, and it's like 5. I'm like, who is this for? Like, why are you telling someone to come to this place and it's like 5 people? But I guess they want the
Well, Brian,
scenery.
and I can appreciate that, because
Yeah,
also again, it's just like grass is green. Like if you are trying to get other people to come to your place, like
yeah,
particularly Newfoundland, there is no other place in Canada like this.
yeah,
So you've really got to highlight that. And the people who are going to want to come out here are coming out because
because of
there's
that.
nobody, and
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you can go somewhere where it's completely quiet and dead still, and you just have ocean and sky and like, the grace of God above you. Like it's I totally get it.
No, it's fair. I guess it's like a different, like I feel like as I get older, I might be like, you know what, I get it now. But
And I think that's it,
yeah,
right? Like I think that if you're younger, for sure,
yeah,
those tourism commercials aren't going to get you. But I guess I'm in that demographic now
yeah,
where
yeah,
I totally get it.
yeah.
I've
Because
got 2 young kids. I totally will go somewhere
yeah,
like that.
the only thing that I don't know if it's smart marketing, but I'll give them credit for, because I think it's like it's like, sometimes you have hitting marketing and you'd love to have them in a room or sit down and be like, was this the
What was
intent behind this? But it's like
Yes.
at the end of those commercials. So when I compare it to the Ontario one, Ontario just says visit ontariotourism.ca, and I mean that is as Ontario as you can get, where it's almost like, hey, don't bother me. Go to a website and
Check
check
it
it
out
out
yourself.
yourself. Where here it's like, call Susan. I'm like, man, that feels so wholesome. You're basically saying, you know who Susan is? Call her. Just
That's
go
really
ahead and
funny.
call her and make her feel welcome. And I'm like, that's great. The other double-edged sword of that is then when you go up away, they're like, hey, I got a guy named Dave from Newfoundland. You know him? And I'm like, oh, you talking about Dave from the tourism commercials? And then they're like, yeah, I called him. He was so friendly. I was like, no. It's like, not at all.
That's
But
hilarious.
yeah, so those are like my takeaways from like the commercials, like comparing them side by side. I mean, I feel like that should be in a podcast itself. Brian compares commercials from all over Canada and be like, compare
Specifically
Newfoundland.
the tourism commercials. Yeah.
Yeah, like Brian, there's other commercials out there. I'm like, I understand, but tourism to me is a big thing. I want to ask you too, because of course now we're into season 4 with Hudson and
Mhm.
Rex, and I don't want to give away spoilers or anything for people who obviously want to keep up with the show, but I do know that we have, because I'm just looking at the notes to make sure I got this right, but
Yeah.
you have Peter Mitchell now as a
Yes.
showrunner.
Yeah.
Now he's been on, I think it was like Frankie Drake Mysteries, Murdoch Mysteries, worked
Yeah.
with them. So I feel like this is kind of up his alley because it's kind of
Mhm.
like a show that involves, let's be honest, murder and mysteries,
Yep.
but it's just a dog that helps out as well.
Yep.
So like, how does adding him kind of help with production, helped with just the whole, like taking the show to a new identity? Because I know that there's also this mobile unit that became a
Yes.
thing, which
Yeah.
I will be honest with you, it's taken its time with me. I kind of
You don't
like
like the mobile unit?
I'm not a big fan of the mobile unit. Like, you know what? For the first season, like the first season premiere of for this one for season 4, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is cool. They're kind of on the road here. But then I was like, man, this is a little bit dragged out. And you know what? I have said it in Twitter. I wasn't taking anything away from the show. Still like it, but everyone has an opinion. So
I'm curious. So I'm curious, because I kind of forgot that the mobile unit was like a new thing. Because
yeah,
sometimes when you're in it, like
you're
it
in the
just becomes
moment.
familiar so
Yeah.
fast. Yeah. Um, so what is it about? Is it about the four of us kind of being on the scene more? Is it about like it being a bit more team effort?
I
What
feel
would it?
like, and I don't want to make again because people are going to be like, "How dare you have her on the show?" and then insult her. I'm like,
Oh my
no,
God,
no. I'm
I
like,
don't
yeah,
care. I don't care. I mean,
I-
everybody's got their own
yeah,
opinion, and
yeah.
that's
You'd rather
yeah, of
honesty than me
course.
basically say like,
Yes. I
love the
don't care.
mobile unit, but
I don't even know if I love the mobile. Like I've
yeah,
just not thought about it. So I
yeah.
haven't even formed my opinion. But I guess I'm asking only because I
Interest
just
to
forgot
you,
that the mobile unit was like
yeah,
a new thing again
yeah,
because we're in it and we do it. I also feel like of late I don't know how much of the mobile unit we've done, but
yeah.
I'm yeah I'm
No,
just
no, it's
curious.
fair. And then I feel like if Peter Mitchell ever watches this and then be like, "Is that Brian auditioning for a role for one of my things?" We're gonna have a lot of mobile units for that guy. But
Peter's very busy. Peter's very
uh,
busy.
but no, like I guess it's kind of to me, it's kind of like some people like it, some people don't. But to me, it's almost like very Scooby Doo-ish. Like,
Okay,
and I
fair
like
enough.
Scooby Doo. I like Scooby Doo, but there's a point
Yeah.
where it's like if it was for like 1 or 2 episodes, and again, I don't know how long, but I'm like, okay, I get it. This is one where they have to be all out in the open. But I remember watching the one where it was one that again, I don't know the episode name, but it's recent where the cop was the bad guy that was supposed to be the young cop that
Yes.
befriends Jesse. And I was like,
Yes.
man, this just seems very long. Like it seems like a very
Interesting.
long scene. But like the other episodes I could watch because the one that I really do enjoy, the Alan Hawko one that he was in, and the Mary
Yes.
Welch one, you get different scenes, you get different like places where scenes take
Yes.
place. And
Yeah.
I kind of like the setup of having yes, Jesse can be involved. And Justin's going to come after me and be like, what are you trying to do? Take me off the show? I'm like, no, relax. But I liked him kind of in the
You
computer
liked it
realm.
separate. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when
Like
he
all
did
of us
get,
having our individual
yeah.
roles
And then when he did get
and places.
involved, like with the episode, like the one where he kind of gets caught and the student ends up putting him in a pool, I was like, okay, see, that's what happens when you step
When you leave,
outside
yes,
your comfort zone, but you're
totally.
learning, right? So I feel like when it's the four of you all together, I'm like, okay, like I feel it's kind of either forced and it's outside your realms in
Yep.
terms of like you're the Dr. Sarah.
Yep.
I expect you to be more or less like, hey, this is
Yep.
what we did when you discovered this. When you're out in the field, I'm like, ah, what's going on here?
Listen, I mean, I feel like that viewpoint is totally valid, and
Yeah.
people will have their own individual responses. Um, I, it's hard for me to comment because I'm on the inside of it,
Yeah.
and as far as so look, so when Peter came on board this year, um, I think the point was we wanted to change things up a bit creatively, and I think there was a desire to make it more of an ensemble piece, an ensemble show. Um, and I will say that from the inside of it, I really enjoy it because we all just get to work together more, which
Yeah.
for me it is fun. I also have different things to do, which is fun. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There was a point where I was nobody told me that I was coming back and like had assumed this cop role, right? Like I was always like forensics and in the
Yeah.
lab and I've been much more in the field as you said and I'm like a cop, like sometimes I tote a gun. And I had to wrap my head around that because there was something about that significant that really kind of
Kind of
changed
like
things.
puts it in a different perspective. Like, why does she have a gun? Like, she's a doctor.
Well, it just, I've spent 3 seasons
Yeah.
playing a doctor, and not that that isn't still part of it, but I had to now make room for this other thing, and 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 part of it was my own thing, like in terms of women cops and how we play those roles. There was something about, and listen, I'm still trying to find it, but there was something I remember talking to Gary, who was the director, Gary Harvey, who I was like, I can't play a hard cop. I can't, because on television you often see women cops and they're always hard.
Yeah, yeah,
And A, I was like, I'm just not interested in doing that. But B, I was like, Sarah's just not that. And I kind of didn't know how to meld the two, like what I knew of Sarah and then what my understanding of like, I mean, limited understanding of like what a woman cop was. And part of that is I think that again, I just I at least, again, I don't watch very much television, but I have this idea that, when I audition for cop roles, I definitely don this kind of hard ass
yeah,
kind of edge, which just always feels really false to me. And I think I am trying to just find the balance of what I think feels real. And I don't want to force that kind of persona on Sarah or on this new female cop position that I have, that I occupy. So, anyways, but I do enjoy having a bit more to do, and I do enjoy leaving the lab, and I definitely enjoy being out more.
yeah,
And I think we've really utilized that this year. So I don't know. For me, I find it fun, and it's funny because the other thing too is we wanted this season to feel a bit more paced up, because in the past there's a lot of talking in the studio, and particularly season 3 felt like there was just a lot of talking about the cases,
yeah,
whereas this season, I think the goal in having us all out was to do less talking and to get the show moving and to get us actors moving with the plot line, as
yeah.
opposed to standing around and discussing what was happening. um, so anyway, so it's interesting, and I'd be curious to check back in with you and see
Yeah.
how you feel the rest of the season pans out, because the goal is to pace the show up and
Yeah.
to make it move and feel a bit more active. So it's interesting that you
No,
describe
no,
feeling like
absolutely,
that episode is
it's not like slamming like Peter for whatever, like, and
I'm
that's what
I
I
don't
want to make
think
sure,
any.
because there's
Yes.
people out there that will come, like, not that's like 1,000 people coming at me at Twitter, but there might be the one that's like, excuse me, are you Peter? And I'm like, I get what you're saying. It's just that everyone has their own insight. Like I
Everybody
have
has
favorite,
their own
yeah,
opinion,
I have
and it
favorite movies. I have a favorite actor, but I also have that favorite actor who has crappy movies. But
absolutely. I
like,
feel like it's okay to find fault with a show, like or have your own preferences, and
yeah.
and we are doing things a bit differently this year, and I think that some people will love those changes, and some people may not love those changes, and then I think a lot of people will be sort of like in the middle, where there are things that they love and things that they're like,
Well,
you
it's
know,
like with any show. Like, I know that you were mentioning about like the cop persona, but it's like, you
yeah,
look at like, and again, I haven't sat down and watched these shows, but I get the commercials. I see it enough where it's like Rookie Blue. I think it's like another one is like the Rookie or whatever that. But like when you see that, you're like, okay, these are like hard ass cops, whatever. Like, I get it, but I find with shows, like, I'm a big sitcom person, so you can go back and watch Friends or Big Bang Theory or even How I Met Your Mother, and then there's people that love the show until a certain point, and they're
yes,
like, I tuned out after this point. It's like,
yep,
I think the How I Met Your Mother one, a lot of people like, yeah, after like season 3 and 4, it just started becoming repetitious, and then they're like, the last season was just one big long scene that people, and I'm like, fair enough. Same with Big Bang. They're like, it started getting too bloated. I'm like, that's your opinion. Cool,
yep,
have it. But I
yep,
like the Big Bang when they added more people, but that's just me. But people are like, well,
yep.
it kind of differed away from Penny and Leonard. I'm like, but then you got more characters that you could kind of evolve around. So I feel like early on, especially when they brought in these from different shows, you're kind of like, how do I feel about this? But like, when you could go into season 6 still doing the mobile unit, and I'll be like, you know what, that's a good choice. The first few times I was like, but then by season 6, you're like, I'm used to it now. So I think it's like that process of like, I don't like change.
Well, I also think, I mean, the mobile unit also does ease off a little bit. Like a lot of that is also just, particularly when we started shooting in the summertime, we were
Yeah.
trying to utilize outdoor locations. And just maximize like how much of like the like exterior shots we could use of Newfoundland, and that involved using all of us more.
Yeah.
So as the weather gets colder and we can't be outside as much, the mobile unit doesn't become as much of a thing. But I do think it also. I think it just gets incorporated in a way that feels, because I agree with you. You really feel it in that episode that you're talking about, but I think it might feel a bit less stark
Yeah.
as the season goes on. But yeah, around season 4, season 5, shows do tend to change things up a bit because creatively everybody's just needs a bit more juice and wants to feel like you're not doing the same thing over and over again. And I think we were all really feeling like we needed, just slight tweaking. And I don't think the changes are major. There's subtle things that I feel like um, uh, just ground, for me at least, just ground the show a bit more.
Yeah.
And I've been enjoying the changes. I've been again, it's about grounding. Um yeah, I don't know.
No,
And I've been
the
enjoying being with the guys a bit more. It's been nice. And guest stars, like because historically I don't really get to see the guest stars, and often the guest stars are my friends from Toronto who I never get
yeah.
to see anymore. So it's been really nice getting to see to
That's what I think,
to work with the
and
guest
there's a
stars.
good point because I think that's what Justin said, or as they know him as Jesse on the
Yeah,
show, more or less said when Alan Hocko was one of the guest stars. He's like, yeah, it would be nice to actually like talk to him a little bit more, but he's
yeah,
like, because where I'm situated and where he had to be, and I'm like, it's like that kind of sucks, I guess, because now
yeah,
you'll see him more when you're all together. But
yes,
I made the joke to Jesse where I'm like, man, you had Alan Hocko on the show, and you know that there's Republic of Doyle, and you didn't use him in the same way Republic of Doyle is. And like he gave you a good counterpoint. I think Mary Welch gave me a good counterpoint of like, hey, like that show's been over for a while. But
yes,
I'm like, I would still like to see it, like, in a future episode where like it's a big, even if you did it like for season 6 or 7, or like if you hopefully going that far,
yeah,
instead like you had like an hour and a half for that episode where it's like, hey, this case is so big, we had to go back in the history and then
I
look,
get.
hey, we found this guy, and then that becomes, and I'm like, man, that's enticing.
Oh, that's
um
funny.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
an interesting. Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
come up with ideas, people
yeah,
don't use them.
yeah,
Yeah, I even said to I said to Justin, because I was like, Justin, like, he's like, yeah, I try to, get when my girlfriend comes down and she wants to see the scene and stuff like that. I'm like, well, that's good, but you should try to work her into one of the sets, or like something where it's like, pretend that she gets abducted and then you're somehow
What if she
involved.
doesn't want to be? She's not in
Oh
the
no,
bathroom.
exactly, right, right. But I was just like, yeah, you can tell her no, or if she wants to. But he's like, I will suggest the idea, and I'm like, yeah, but don't tell her it's for me, because she will find me and be like, listen, dude.
She's like, I just want to go see the
Yeah,
sites, and
yeah. I
that's
just
it. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
need to be in
I
front of
don't.
a camera.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you too, because it's an interesting question that we've asked Justin, and I want to ask you as well. But like the working with the dog, because I know that they've said in Justin's case, he was like, it was very interesting. Of course, the dynamic of getting used to the dog. Um, I hope it's not spoiling it for, like, I guess, a younger audience who watches it. But it's like, obviously there's someone there, Sherry, I believe, that teaches the dog the commands
Yeah,
and stuff. But I get so enticed, which is good with shows, because when you get so invested in the show or so in like watching it, I sometimes forget that it's not Reardon, or in this case,
yeah,
Hudson, that really controls the dog. It's someone
yeah.
on the side that's, but you're so invested, like, man, it's like, I wonder if I seen Hudson out in public, will he have Rex? And you're like, oh wait, he wouldn't, because they're two separate things. But
Yeah.
how do you find working with, I guess, the dog, or like that whole dynamic on this show?
I mean, so this is also another reason why I like the change up this year, because also historically I don't have
Yeah,
very much
exactly.
with Rex usually, and I do get to work with him more, and I definitely get to see more of the stunts, which is a lot of fun. Um, and it's funny. So a couple things. So um, I mean, Sherry is the mastermind. Sherry and her team, Victoria as
Yeah.
well, who's amazing. But what they get that dog to do. I mean, Diesel is like, I joke about this, and it's not really a joke, but like I will go in to do ADR and I'll see clips of scenes that we've shot. And every time I see him do something, I mean, I also love dogs and I'm, super gushy about dogs and kind of soft that way. But um, every time I see him do something, I just like tear up because I just think he's remarkable. Um, but 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 yes, it's Sherry who's like behind us calling out commands. I mean, sometimes it's us.
Yeah.
We've developed enough rapport where often if Diesel needs to be giving, myself or Johnny or Justin or either any of us looks, it's us kind of off camera calling to him. And we make these, I don't know if anybody's told you this, but we make like funny sounds. Like we'll be like Diesel,
Yeah.
Diesel, 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 Diesel. Like we do partake in it a little bit. Um, but it is mostly Sherry and Vic and the team. I mean, it's interesting. When we first started, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have this dog. I'm going to get a cuddle with him, blah, blah." And it's not like that at
No,
all.
no.
Like Diesel only has eyes for Sherry. And like really, like he's on set and that dog just traces where like his mama is. Wherever Sherry goes, Diesel's only got eyes for her. Now, 4 seasons in, I feel like I mean, I'll speak for myself. I feel like he's warmed up to me. I think I found some like sweet spots in terms of petting him. He really loves to be stroked on his nose. And I feel like ever since I started doing that, he's kind of warmed up to me a bit. But really, he loves Sherry. He loves his like Sherry is his mama, and so he
Yeah.
really is just just wants her. But he has like, now I feel like I can kind of pet him and talk to him a bit, and he doesn't like walk away. Like he'll tolerate me for a bit
Who
and then
who
he'll
are
walk away.
you? Yeah. Yeah.
But so it is funny because you look at guest stars who are like so excited to work with him, and I feel like of anybody, Diesel's probably the most professional. Like he is the most like I come, I do my job, I hit my mark,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I go.
I'm
So
out of here.
so yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic. Now I will say this also, he's so cute because also every season he comes back, his personality in the same way that like any of us would and any person would, like you can see when he settled into the show a little bit more. Like there are times where I think it was last season where it was just like he didn't care. If you asked him to do something, he'd be like, "No, I don't feel like it." And so it would be like that much more work to get. But it's just that he got bored. He got bored with
Yeah.
certain commands, and so you'd have to like change things up to re-engage him. But it was just funny because last year it felt like he had like a little bit of an attitude. And this year that's actually gone. This year he doesn't have
That
that.
that
But it's funny to
that's
see
like
him come back like slightly changed each
yeah,
season
that's the cut clip that people are going to use. It's like
for
she
sure.
says he has it's like she says he has a bit of an attitude, and then there's like it's like now she's no longer on the show. It's like
I
no,
know,
hold on.
seriously. Oh boy, what did I
Yeah,
say?
yeah. But no, I think it's interesting because of course I grew up now in the 90s. Like I turned like 30 earlier this month, but it's watching Earbud and watching like Wishbone and
Yes.
seeing those, I'm like I as a kid you're like, man, that's so cool. Or as a boomafoo and you're like, man, I want to have a lemur around teaching me shit. And then when you actually go in behind the scenes and see what, like I think it's like the Crap brothers, I believe, that had to do what they had to entail with all that. And I'm just like, so wait, for the most part, you didn't get to work with Zaboomafoo? I'm like, man, that's like
No, it's
soul
just her.
crushing. Or it's like Blue's
I
Clues, where as a
know.
kid, you're like, man, I want a blue dog. And then it's like, actually, that's a person who drew the dog, and Steve had to do
Yes.
a lot of the stuff. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, why are you telling me this? And like, it
I know, it
hurts. But
spoils everything, hey? It
yeah,
spoils
but
everything.
but it's nice to, I guess when you get older, it's nice to know, and then you give it a little bit more of a, I guess, a tap on the hat or whatever you want to put it as.
Yep.
Okay, like
But I will say we do have rapport with Diesel. Like
yeah,
there is like when he comes to set, like when he shows up for the day, he'll make rounds and he'll go and say hello to everybody. And like, you'll see him, he'll just walk over to each cast member or different people that he likes and he'll give them a pet and then he'll go over to the next person. So there is camaraderie there, but it's not like we're not all cuddling and petting. Like
you
it's not that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I want to ask you too, because I know again where I kind of mentioned about like the mobile unit and my relationship with the mobile unit per se.
Yes.
But I do like the fact that over the seasons, again, I guess what it's like with, I don't want to put in spoilers or yeah, because again I don't know how far in advance these things are written, but you see
Mhm.
love interest develop over time and things like that. Like I noticed with certain seasons or certain scenes, you and John or Hudson kind of,
Mhm.
have scenes where it gets a little bit closer. And I noticed now in the last few episodes here, again, where you're working a lot more closer, it's like they're trying to get this development where I feel like, if this ends, say it's season 11, season 12, and it's like, oh, by the way, these two got married or these two like, got engaged. I'm like, okay, I kind of see that coming. But is that like what you think they're trying to build? Or is it just more or less like, hey, the situation, circumstance where if you're in like, I don't know, a freezer with anybody and it's almost like, God damn, we're going to die in here. It's like, yeah, of course we'll cuddle to try to stay alive. But, or do you think they're
Yes.
trying to build that?
I think there's a thing. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a thing between Charlie and Sarah, and I think that there are reasons why they are why those feelings aren't acted upon, but
Yeah.
there's definitely a thing between Sarah and Charlie for sure.
Yeah.
I can't say too much, but I will say
Obviously,
that
yeah.
this season, it's a it has been a very, very, very slow burn.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for people who are interested in that relationship, there's there's again, I can't say too much, but there's more development this season than
Yeah.
there has been in all 3 seasons combined.
Because I
So
guess where
that's
it's more
something
or
to
less
look forward to.
working closer together as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I think just creatively trying to change things up. We were trying to, you know, um, you just have to change up what's going on between them, right? Like we can't sustain this
Yeah.
connection, but not having anything happen with it for two, or maybe we can. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's fun to be able to play stuff in terms of that relationship now. And it's funny too because also when I'm inside of it. Uh, in the last several seasons, it's hard to gauge
Yeah.
how that storyline is coming across, right? But every so often, I will just walking with the kids, I'll bump into somebody, and the first thing they ask is, "What is happening with Charlie and Sarah?" Or
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
go online and look at things, it's always like, "What is happening with those two?" And I sometimes forget because again, it's been such a slow burn that like sometimes we yeah anyway it's interesting to see how things
Yeah,
translate.
that's fair. Like I know now that obviously through doing 4 seasons here now, people have their favorite episodes. I mean, like obviously people who watch it have a favorite episode or one that they really get drawn to. Um, Here in Newfoundland, I believe. Well, I don't know if everyone has it, but I know the FX channel. I believe we have shows it constantly. Like they'll show like
Okay.
season 1 repeats, season 2.
Wow.
Let's put it this way: if there's nothing on TV, my mom will talk to the remote to look at like Hudson and Rex, and
Oh, that's
she'll
right, like it's just on all the time.
yeah, but she can find it too because you can like if you have I think it's like Rogers or you can talk to the mic and look it up, and you can pick which season you want to watch.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
it's kind of interesting in that sense. But I know there's a few that I like personally, and there's different scenes, obviously, of course. Like for me, I come from very sitcom, very like I like humor. Like
Yeah.
I've never really watched action movies or like horror movies, but like there's sometimes that I will sit and watch it and I'll be like, okay, this is enticing. Like you're like, oh, if I leave now, that's cool. Like I feel like in Friends or a sitcom, you can leave and be like, I know how this ends, and
Yes.
I should know that like nothing bad is ever really going to happen to Hudson and Rex because there's so more episodes, but like they get themselves in so many tricky stories. Like how are they getting themselves out of this one? Because the one that I will still watch if it comes on, knowing how it ends. But I think it's the one where he kind of gets in a relationship with another buddy cop, and then she ends up turning on him at the end, and then like I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
Rex leads them into like again a whole bunch of crates, and he's like he can sniff out the
that was
drugs.
Charlotte Sullivan.
Yeah,
Charlotte
like he can
Sullivan
sniff
from
out the
Working
drugs,
Blue.
and then like
Yes.
boom, just as soon as that crate opens,
Yes.
it's like they're all, and I was like, damn, you just got set up so bad. But I'm like,
I actually think that's one episode that I have not seen. I don't think
oh
I've seen
really?
that episode. Yeah, I don't think I've seen
Oh,
that
there you go. I
episode.
spoiled it for you. I spoiled. No, I'm only kidding. You were
I mean,
there.
I knew. Yeah.
But like some of those episodes, I look back and I'm like, oh, like that's a really good episode that I'll rewatch. I don't remember who plays this part, or like again, I'll tune in and out sometimes of coming in during an
Mhm.
episode. But there's like this whole, I think it's a badass gentleman who's bald. He's a little bit on the bigger side, and like every few episodes he comes in and Rex just doesn't like him at all. They're after locking him away a few times, but I mean, if I watched it a little bit more, I would know. But I was like, man, like that seems like a developing character that's supposed to
I
be
know
like
who
the
you're talking
anti-heel.
about.
Yeah,
Mankowitz.
yeah. There you go.
The character's Mankowitz, and I can't remember
Yeah,
the actor all of a
but
sudden.
I love like I'm sure in real life, because again, I like that if you play your part so well that you actually hate that person in real life, even though you know that they're probably just nice. That's how I
Yes.
feel. Like he plays that part so well that I'm like, in real life, I'd still be a little bit like, I know you're an actor, but like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
parts where he's like, oh, come over. It's like, come over, dog. I'll give you a scratch behind the ears. I'm like, oh, you're such an ass. Like, you're
Yeah.
such an ass. But
Yeah. No, he was very
it,
good.
yeah, yeah. But like in terms of that, like, do you particularly have like a favorite episode or a favorite scene with you? Like, I feel like Jesse would say, I didn't like the part where I drowned.
um, I mean, that's yes, I'm sure I have favorite episodes. I mean, but so there are the episodes that are my favorite because the experience of shooting them
Yeah, of
was
course.
particularly fun, or and then there are the ones that I watch that I think are just uh, like as an episode, just all around it
Yeah,
works really well.
you'd sit there and watch it all day.
Again, funnily enough, that episode, I think it was the first episode that started this season off, was one of my favorite episodes in terms of shooting it, and in terms of what it looked like. I just thought everything looked beautiful. Like the landscape looked beautiful. For somebody like our wardrobe against the backdrop of the trees and the ocean, like everything just looked really stunning. Um, but I also, it was our first episode with this new director, Gary Harvey, and with Peter Mitchell's new direction. And it just, again, the change up was subtle, but it for me, it felt impactful in terms of how to play the scenes and how to play with the other actors. And so that is one of my favorite episodes. Um, um, oh gosh. And then which is the one? I mean, any of the episodes that involve Rex, like there was. So I have the worst memory, and sometimes all of these episodes blur into one for me.
That's
Um,
fair.
but the one where Rex had to give like a blood transfusion to his brother, I just thought was a sweet episode. Like there's some Rex
Yeah.
episodes that really particularly kind of gut me. Um, yeah, but of course, because you've asked me and I'm put on the spot, I can't think of I
That's fair.
can't
Like
think
when
of
it
what they're
comes to
called or which ones.
when
Yeah.
it when it comes to certain seasons of shows that I've watched 20 times or so, I still struggle with. I can give you like a scene, and
Yeah.
someone will be like, okay, that's what it's like. The one that I think that really stands out for me now, again, I come in and out of watching it at points in times. When there's a new episode, I'll watch it like in my own time. But
Mhm.
the one that I really think kind of highlights, and this is why, again, to defend my mobile unit thing was, uh,
Yes.
like the episode where I believe, and again, I'll explain it. You might know it, people might know it, but it's like the one where I think it's a professor that taught you basically how you became a doctor, and he ends up
That's the
tricking you
Peter
about.
Outerbridge.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the
That
one that
one
I
I
really like
enjoyed.
because it kind
I
of
really
showed
enjoyed that one.
your smarts, showed your insight, showed basically that everything he taught you, you're kind of using against him now in terms of like, hey,
Yeah.
you didn't think I was that smart. Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty good at this, and I was like, damn, that actually shows like, okay, we're dealing with a smart, like a
Yeah.
smart person
I
here.
forgot all about that episode. I mean, I also particularly love that episode because Peter Outerbridge I had worked with on essentially the first show that I ever really like, my first real show.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to be reunited with him and to catch up with him and to get to work with him. I really want them to bring him back, but yes, I've forgotten about that show, and also it was fun to play because often you don't get to see very much of Sarah's personal, like you don't get to see much of Sarah outside of
Background,
like
her
work
backstory.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was really nice to be able to play like this personal relationship and this thing that she had history, this other person she had history with, and to play the surprise and the upset of her finding out that um that this person that she revered wasn't who she thought she was. So yes, I forgot about that episode. That was a fun one to play.
I did like that episode just because it kind of gives you a little bit of like a crossroads for
Yeah,
yourself, like your
absolutely.
character of like, what do I do here? But
Yeah.
I did think it was kind of interesting. I don't know how well it would, like, again, some of the stuff with TV it's kind of produced that way, but it's like the fact that he was able to have like fake skin over and then for you to figure that out, I was like, man, like I don't know if that would ever happen in real life, but at the same time, like I'm like that's kind of dope that she knew instantly that, hey,
Yeah.
like you didn't think I caught that, like when you said, oh, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom for a few, like come
Yeah.
on. So that's like one of my favorite ones that kind of sticks out, because I mean there's obviously episodes that people have more involvement than others. I mean, Jesse had said in his that, and again, for the mobile unit, Jesse's probably one of the ones who, like yourself, probably likes it because there's more to it, there's more engagement, because for the first few seasons, I guess he's kind of stuck in a computer room where it's almost
It's
like
just all computer talk.
Yeah, it's like he gets a call where it's like, can you look up this for me? And then that's his scene where he does that. And I'm sure if you ask him whether it's love or hate, the one where he actually gets drowned in a pool, I mean, he actually gets to leave the office.
To do something. He gets to do something. You get to say different things, and you get to show your personality as the character over just, either medical jargon or technical jargon.
The catch-22 of obviously like the mobile unit episode, like I know I've said my kind of piece on the first episode or like this one, but like I do like though that like in time, like you said, you probably grow to like it or grow to adjust to it. But I did like how they presented Jesse in that episode, where it's kind of like, because again, with every episode, you need something to entice the good guy to be like, okay, you know what, you actually do have a point. Like when they're at a bar and the guy's like, you know what, I know what it's like when the boss doesn't listen to you. And, leading up to that, he was pretty much getting told, hey, don't do that. Absolutely. Don't do this. And I was like, all right, that gives him a reason to basically kind of trust this guy. And then when it turns just, straight up shoots a guy and he's like, who's going to believe you? Because you're going to be dead too. I'm like, oh shit, like this did not go in his favor, but it still kind of plays to his character where it's kind of like, hey, he's trying so hard, but he's just making this wrong decision. And then, somewhere down the road, it's going to come up again where it's like, Jesse, stop screwing up, but we love you. But it just plays well. So, I mean, if that's more to the mobile side of things, great. But I still love the kind of setup where you each had your own little identity thing. But hindsight's 20. Yeah.
But you do get to see us doing more than just the standard. Like you, and I can say this through the rest of the season, but like you get to see Jesse doing stuff other than, on the computer. And he's so great. And Justin is so great as Jesse. And it's, to me, it's like, it's such a waste not to be able to utilize that. Like, I'm so glad that they've got him out, because there's so much more that you can see. Like, there's so much for him to bring to that character now that he's not tethered to a computer, So anyway, again, one of these days we'll check back in, and I'd be curious to see where you're sitting on the mobile unit.
Like to kind of clue it up, because I do want to clue it up. But I want to ask you just maybe a few more kind of fun questions here. And again, they're not like, it's basically your opinion based too, but working with these people, like, have you ever sat down to watch, I know you said you don't watch a lot of TV, but like we mentioned this to Jesse, and if we ever have John on, I'd love to mention it to John too, but have you ever sat down to watch Justin Kelly in The Latest Buzz, or John in like the movie where he's actually like a ex-professional player that now relies on this girl to like basically, because I look at that, my mom plays that movie a lot when it's on like Lifetime or the W Network, and I'm like, that's the guy from Hudson and Rex, but I know him from Hudson and Rex now, even though that this was an earlier role, but I'm like, that's so cool. But I even said to Jesse, I'm like, what about if you guys like revisited your past roles in an episode where it's like John has that girl come in and be like, hey, I helped you when you were injured, when you were an ex, and I'd be like, that'd be kind of an interesting twist. But have you ever seen them like in other roles than what they play?
No. I mean, part of that is part of, I mean, it's really funny that you bring that up, because just this past week, we were joking in the green room between shots about how we should sit down. We should each pick one of the things that we're like the most mortified by in terms of what we've done. We'll each pick one of the ones that one of the shows that we've done that we're just the most embarrassed by, and we should just sit and watch everyone's pick. So it's funny that you say that. I mean, it's never going to happen because we're also so busy and but
Oh, I'd
that
love to
would
see it.
that would
Yeah.
be a fun thing to do. But we have definitely talked about it. We've definitely talked about it, and we've definitely talked about the different projects that we've done where we're like, "Ugh, I don't know why
I feel
I
like
did
that's
that."
what you should do. Like as a like I know when they go on like Twitter, because obviously the show is Hudson and Rex. People want to see like Rex updates because he's the dog. But I would
Mhm.
love to see ones
Mhm.
where it's like on Twitter, even if it's like just a 5-second clip or 5-minute clip, I should say, where it's like,
That's
hey,
funny.
it's like here's John and Justin, and they're gonna watch the latest Buzz, and then just watching Justin's reaction to like some of the stuff that he said or did on the latest Buzz, and he'd be like,
Yes.
"Please turn
Yes.
this off." I'd be like, "No, no, no,
This would
wait."
be a good
John gets
this would be
his
a
turn
fun
too.
thing.
Yeah, John gets
This
his
would
turn too.
this would be hard to do because it's really hard watching yourself on anything, let alone watching yourself suck or do something stupid. Um, but it would be fun.
What are you talking about, Mayko? I do it all the time. I'm like, I watch these podcasts over and over. I'm like, man, I thought you would
It's
be
the
getting
worst.
better with age.
It's the worst.
Yeah, yeah.
Watching yourself. Who wants to
Some be
hear
like,
yourself and
you
watch
did,
yourself?
you did fine in that interview. I'm like, yeah, but look at me. I'm like, like, did I? Or are you just being nice? The last kind of question I want to ask, and then we'll do a few plugs at the end
Okay.
here. But what are you most excited about in this season that you've either done so far or that you're looking forward to doing? I know it's kind of like a two-sided question, but take your time.
No, I think that's an easy one for me. It's going back to what we were talking about before. Being able to move. And again, I can't really say too much in terms of details, but uh, there is movement. There's development in terms of the Charlie Sarah relationship, and being able to finally do something with that uh, is so nice. It's so nice. It's so nice because I feel like we owe that to the audience because everybody's been waiting to see what's happening, and but it also feels nice because again it's always fun for me to reveal some of Sarah's personal side, her person rather than her what she is at work.
Yeah.
And and also because all of that is new to me, right? Like when I don't know where Charlie and Sarah are going, so I'll get a script and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's fun for me to see what's happening with that. So that is what I think the most excited about this season.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Mayko Nguyen for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thanks for listening and good night.